We are headed out to put up some cameras. That'll be another video coming down the road here on Ft-lbs Bunjie as we get ready for the late crossbow season. But Miss Genevieve and I
Hi.
are getting excited about the possibility that there might be some deer left over for us as late crossbow season hunters. We're going to find out. We're going to put up those cameras to find out. But this is a good time. I got a question. What do you do to hunt in bad weather? Now, Genevieve and I got a little bit of experience hunting in bad weather. We hunted out in the state game lands one year when it was really, really, really cold. You remember that?
Which time?
Yeah. Most of the time in late season, it gets pretty cold here in northeastern Pennsylvania, but I think cold qualifies as bad weather, don't you?
Oh, definitely.
And also today we wake up and it's pretty sloppy, the weather is. We got all this, it's wet and drippy and rainy and just miserable. And we got a little bit of everything going on today. So that presents certain challenges for us as crossbow hunters. And we have to take into account what our options are when we are faced with bad weather. That one time on the state game lands, Genevieve and I are out there, and man, it was miserable. I mean, it was just so cold. I think, for starters, you want to talk about what we need to do to stay warm, because forget the crossbow, what happens if you're not warm, right? We got to start with you first, because you're not going to make it through a late season hunt if you are not comfortable. So in bad weather, how do you protect yourself? We wear insulated boots, right?
Yep.
Not just rubber boots. Rubber boots and lots of socks aren't going to cut it. You can put all the little foot warmers you want in your boots and they will not stay warm if you don't have good boots. I think, at least, you need to have insulated boots. Now, I have some 1,000 gram insulated boots. They're real heavy insulated boots. That might be more than what you need. You might be able to get away with a little bit less, like 800, maybe even 400. That's pushing it if it's real cold. But if you're sitting in a tree stand, your feet are going to get cold faster rather than slower. So I think it's important to have really, really good boots. If you're spotting and stalking, moving more often, you can probably get away with less insulation in those boots.
I'm the one who seems to freeze every single time. Like, we went out 2 different years, and the second time I bundled right up, but I still just about froze to death.
So really, I think what Genevieve is saying, if you want to stay warm in the late season, be really, really fat. She's a skinny little kid. And
yeah, I don't last too long out there.
Yeah. Wear the bib overalls, the insulated bib overalls. Probably putting some of it on when you get to your hunting location. It's not a bad idea. You don't want to get all sweaty on the way in there and then sit there in the cold. That's no good. You want to, avoid the sweating on the way in, and then when you get all set up, get all those layers on. Gotta fatten up for the late crossbow season. We have finished with tractor supply. We got bird seed, so the birds will be happy in all this miserable weather. Let your crossbow acclimate to these temperatures also. I don't think people think about that enough. It can make a difference. Before you go out and hunt in a cold, late season environment, shoot your crossbow several times after it's sat outside. Let it sit someplace protected so it's not getting rained on, snowed on, nothing like that. But you want to leave it outside, let it get really, really cold, and then take that crossbow and cock it, right? When it's cold, when it's the same temperature as the outdoors, and shoot it just like you would be in the late season. Most crossbows, you'll find, probably hold their accuracy in these lower temperatures. However, we've had one Friend of Bunjie at a meet and greet. I did an interview with a Friend of Bunjie, Ron, who had a pretty high-end crossbow that wasn't shooting the same in different temperatures.
Oh, I remember that.
On my 10-point, I get dramatically different points of aim when the temperature drops like that. When you recite it when it's cold, it tends to stay when it's cold. But when it warms up again, you have to adjust it again.
So you want to check out your crossbow, make sure it's consistent, where it's going to do what you expect it to do. The crossbow will be a lot happier, though, too, if it's acclimated. The same goes for those miserable temperatures in the summer when it's really warm, or early season hunts in Maryland when it's really, really hot and sweaty hunting. Shoot your crossbow in those warmer temperatures and make sure it's going to perform the same. these materials are pretty good. They do a great job putting these crossbows together, but some of them might actually perform a little differently, and you're going to want to know that before you head afield. Don't leave your crossbow in a hot car either, cocked or uncocked, because the car is going to be 120 degrees inside sometimes, whereas it's only 90 degrees outside. So we leave them in the hotel rooms when we're in Maryland when it's really nice and hot. I keep them away from the air conditioning so they're not getting frozen, right? Air conditioning will cool down that stuff just like it cools down your body. So we take them out from the far side of the room, out of their case, where they're protected and a little bit not cooled down quite as much. Then you take them outside when you're ready to hunt. They're the last thing I put in the car. Well, Genevieve leaves the door open so it's nice and cold in here. Yeah. I'll talk about another thing that I want to talk about as far as bad weather. Let's talk about rain, shall we? So rain happens all times throughout the season, right? And I have sat through some pretty bad rain. I don't like sitting through rain. Rain kind of stinks for us as crossbow hunters. Sitting in the rain in Maryland once, I swear it was the thickest, heaviest rain I've ever sat in. It was like something, I thought a train was coming at us. I put my hood up, just bent down, and that was the end of it. It was just going to be bad. That rain can be pretty rough on the crossbows, though, too, and on your gear, the camera gear, that sort of thing. I talked about this in other videos, so do check out my other video on bad weather hunting. I'll put some links in the description or on the cards on the screen, whatever we got to do to have that for you. But basically, what you're going to want to do, I carry some gallon-sized Ziploc bags to put my phone in, to put my gear in case it starts raining. You put that stuff in there, keep them dry, keep them tucked in your pack, and get your gear in there before it starts raining. You don't want water on the inside of those packs, those little baggies, or it does you no good. The other thing I would do is, before you go out in this bad weather and hunt, let's wax the string on the crossbow, right, to keep that moisture from penetrating the string. That can help a little bit. Use your oil, whatever your manufacturer recommends, right? There's lubes and stuff that you can put in the cams, and put a little dab of oil in each of the screw heads too, just to make sure that they got a little bit of water resistance to them. And it does tend to keep the rusting of the mounts of your scope and all that stuff, keeps them from rusting, that kind of thing. There's always that chance that rain or snow is going to affect arrow flight. I have not personally witnessed that. At proper shot distances like 20-30 yards, you're not going to have a problem with that. As a general rule, weather isn't going to influence that. I can tell you that I sat in a couple of inches of snow. It started falling after I sat here on the state game lands. It was a day just like today, sitting on the state game lands. Here we are getting ready to go put up some cameras, and it was on this very state game lands, in fact, that I sat here, and it was snowing just like this. The snow was coming down. It built up on the crossbow. I can tell you with absolute certainty, when I pulled the trigger on that crossbow, there's a buildup of snow. It made no difference whatsoever in the accuracy of my shot. Made no difference whatsoever. That arrow went exactly where I was aiming. There's links in the description for that video too, or cards or whatever. I can also tell you that after I pulled the trigger, there was no snow left on that crossbow. To also protect your gear, the scope slicker or some kind of contraption that will cover your scope, keep the moisture off of it. That's not a bad idea. The scope slicker, I get people asking me all the time about the one on Bunjie III. That scope slicker is actually something you can find on our deathbybunjie.com gear page. If you go to that website, you can check out all the gear I use. Genevieve is putting up a camera, and while she's doing that, I will talk to you a little bit about another thing to take into account is your rangefinder. Bad weather hunting. How are you going to tell how far away those deer are to make a proper shot? Some rangefinders may not function in snow like this. You see how it's coming down? Look at that. It's building. It's actually starting to add up here, pile up, such as it is. But thick snow like this, I can tell you that the Burris Oracle X worked perfectly. It range found everything perfectly in this kind of snow. It didn't make any difference. Fog, a little bit different. Rain, maybe that's different too. So you're going to want to take that into account. Some bad weather, you can have a problem as far as how your scope or your rangefinder is going to perform. So just take that into account. Another thing about acclimation, making sure that your crossbow catches up in terms of the weather outside. If you take a warm crossbow outside into the cold air, you're going to have a fogged up lens, right? And if you take a cold crossbow out into the warm air, you're going to have a fogged up lens. Same with your camera equipment. Man, I fight with that all year long, coming out of a nice, cool hotel room to go out and hunt in the warm, early season air. If you're going to leave it outside to acclimate, maybe do that in a car. On a cold day, that wouldn't be too bad. You know, put it in a car overnight if it's in a safe spot where it's not going to get stolen. Lots of times what I'll do is I'll put the crossbow in the truck, in the garage, so it's like 40 degrees. Then when I take it out and hunt in 30-degree weather, it's already cooled down. The scopes, though, won't fog up if they're already acclimated. acclimated to the outdoor weather. Ooh, like a 300-foot change in elevation. Genevieve's been checking out stuff down there. She's coming. We're looking for our next camera location here on State Game Lands, the Great Death by Bunjie Camerathon. As soon as we got out of the truck, I was like, holy cow, is it cold on this section of State Game Lands? We're up in the air pretty good, that's why. One of the things about hunting in bad weather, whether it's rain or snow or what have you got to be careful with your blood trails. Keep your shots close, keep them short, keep them accurate, and you'll be rewarded. A bad shot trying to track some deer through a covered up blood trail, that's no good. That's not where you want to be in cold weather or in wet weather and snowy weather. Not a good place to be. Illuminoc is your friend in bad weather. At least you'll be able to find your arrow, and that'll give you some pretty good sign about the blood and stuff before the snow covers it up and all that. So at least you'll have some evidence. And filming your own hunt. If you get a tact cam, something like that, just something to give you some kind of video to look at in slow motion. Stop it to see the point of impact. That at least gives you a little bit more information to go forward on when the weather doesn't cooperate with our blood trailing. Look at the view, man. Look at that. Endless mountains of northeastern Pennsylvania, indeed. But just as exciting, a rub. Ooh, we got a rub going on here. That's pretty cool. Ooh, there's another one back there. Cool. Somebody ought to do something about that. Every time I see a large stand of popple or aspen, if you're out west, they call that aspen. But anytime I see that, it reminds me of those Western movies. It's like a Western thing, you know, waiting for John Wayne to come through here. Standing up here on top of this mountain in the cold reminded me of one thing that I wanted to tell you. Bad weather, you don't have to go out, right? It might be better for your crossbow and for you to simply not go out. Just don't go out. Wait for the good weather and hunt during that. You know, if you're going to have a bad afternoon, hunt in the morning or whatever, right? The other option is, of course, there is always the ground blind. Get yourself a $100 pop-up blind hunt out of that. Crossbow will thank you for it, and you'll be a lot happier too.
Now you're recording.
Now I'm recording. As I was saying, we actually have 4G here. We're on the top of a mountain, and Genevieve was just commenting on how pretty it is up here. Then all of a sudden it started to snow and got all miserable and cold and right in our face. It's very sharp snow, very pointy, brisk snow. But we're having a good time. And we got all our cameras up on three different sections of State Game Lands, 2 totally different game lands. I wanted to point out one more little tip. As we're walking down in all of this snow, we got all done and it's all starting to get all miserable. But I wanted to point out one other tip about hunting in bad weather. And that is, when we get back to the truck, first thing we're going to do is take off all our wet clothes and get warm and dry and all that stuff in the truck. You should be doing the same thing with your gear, with your crossbow especially. Get a nice warm dry towel, dry that crossbow off, keep it nice and dry, and it will reward you for years and years to come. You don't want water sitting in there, rusting your components, rotting out your string, all that good stuff. Just dry it off real quick. Then set it someplace with some airflow. Don't lock it in the case right off the bat, maybe necessarily. Get it home, leave it out in the open, in the living room, let it dry off, warm up, all that good stuff slowly. Then when it's good and dry, you put it away. So that completes those tips. I hope you learned something in this video, got something out of it. Share some more fun tips in the comments. How about that? And get out there and shoot more deer, right? Do you think that's a good idea there, kiddo?
Yeah.
Until next time, all hail Bunjie.